So, welcome, Matthias. It's great to have you on. If you'd like to start by just telling me about yourself, really.
Hi, thanks, Alex, for the invitation. So I'm Mateusz Rybinski. I'm an EdTech entrepreneur and someone who really like the idea of innovating the education. For 7 years, I've been a founder of Koding Next. So this is currently the biggest coding and technology school for kids and teenagers in Southeast Asia, based in Indonesia. I was involved in some other startups as well. So for some time, I was a chief revenue officer in startup Skriware from Poland, where I was responsible mostly for international expansion. And it gave me a lot of opportunity to actually travel and see how the education look like in different countries, different continents like from US, Nigeria, Kazakhstan, a lot of European countries, Dubai, and so on. I'm also the president of EdTech Poland Foundation. So this is like association or a foundation which we help Polish companies to grow. We also kind of try to connect three different stakeholders, so the private sector companies, with public sector, and with educators, which are kind of the most important part of the ecosystem for me.
Mm-hmm. You were Chief Revenue Officer at Skriware. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Was that how you got your start in EdTech, or did you start before that?
Yeah, so basically, I founded the first company, EdTech company in Indonesia, but then I'm Polish, so I came back to Poland, and then I spent some time in Poland when the company in Indonesia was mostly run by my partner, and I met Karol, CEO of Skriware. So Skriware at the beginning wasn't the EdTech company, it was the company which was focused on creating the 3D printers for households. But then Karol started the pivot of bringing this 3D printing and robotics to school as a one solution. So basically, it's been a while, I didn't talk about that. So basically, we were selling 3D printers, we were selling robots, and we were selling like curriculum as a one solution to implement STEM, teach programming, teach different aspects of engineering, and so on, using these 3D printers and robot. And then I was there for a few years, and I was responsible for the global expansion, building the distribution network abroad. I managed to enter over 20 countries, but the company was kind of early stage that time. So we had several issues and iterations of the product, but definitely it was very good experience for me. And then I left Skriware in 2020. I came back to Indonesia, but recently Skriware was acquired by Shape Robotics, so that was probably one of the biggest EdTech acquisition in Poland for sure.
Mm-hmm. And how did you manage to expand Skriware so much into different markets?
Yeah, so it was mostly we expanded this by the distributors. So I was looking for a proper partner who have capabilities and willingness to sell these products to schools in the local market. I was looking for these partners through one was attending the different conferences like Bed Show and so on. The other one was like trying directly looking for potential partners who already are in the education sector, who sell something to schools and try to offer them this solution. Sounds easy, but it wasn't. And there was a lot of learning processes for us inside Screeware and for myself personally. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. Also, but that was very interesting to see how education is different, especially that's a pre-COVID area when the EdTech didn't have that much attention. So I remember like whenever I go, there was always question, but where these schools will get money for this solution? It's really nice, but how we can fund it? But then I visited the USA, and then they had totally different problem. Like they spent too much for EdTech solution. I mean, not even EdTech, like a lot of different hardware at schools, even like iPad and so on. They spent so much money on it, but they cannot measure the investment, like if it's good or not. They didn't know. So it was totally different mindset, and also a lot of change during the COVID. So COVID like boost EdTech industry for sure. It was very interesting. And then in the Europe or in the US, there were a lot of recovery funds with different names. And then the big part of it went for education. Still, it's like the big part of it is still going on in Europe and will be for another couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, selling to schools is definitely always a big one because, like you say, budgets and that. Did you, like, what were the main, like, how hard was it to sell to schools? Like, is it something, like, would you do it again with products? Do you think it's like a really difficult market to crack, or?
It is difficult, and it's also hard to expand it because every country has a bit different rules and kind of like a customs. I mean, like the behaviors, the purchasing is really difficult between countries. Even in one country, even in Poland, there are so many different stakeholders who actually can decide of purchase or creating some project. Also dealing with governmental public school, it's a lot of cases it's run by several certain projects. So it's kind of difficult to also get the sustainable business model. It's changing for sure, but yeah, that's a difficultness. And I think in really it's, or you rather have to have a proper local partner to sell it, who understand this process, and best if they have like a local salespeople and they know, principals or IT coordinators from schools, and they have relationship built for years. Or you have to have local presence and strong local team. It depends on many factors, how the company structure, what is the product, and so on. Which one is better? And also, the big problem is that sometimes schools purchase products, but they don't use products or solutions, software, whatever. It's the one thing is to go through the sales, and the other one is in implementation. And to build a long, sustainable business model, you have to be sure that schools really use it, and actually the end user, I would say teacher, likes the product.
Mm-hmm. And did you find any differences, for example, selling to private schools versus non-private schools, or?
Definitely. So in general, I would say private schools are easier. Like the decision-making process is, in most of the cases, is easier, faster. Depends on the market, how, but also private schools can be different between each other, and that doesn't mean they always have funds. There are places where public schools can have more funds than private schools. And also there might be a case that, yeah, like for example, I've been in Nigeria, in Lagos. It's like a capital business city. I mean, it's not capital city, but the main business city in Nigeria. According to what I heard, it's 17,000 private schools there. But to be honest, like the purchasing power, maybe, I guess maybe 1,000, and then the other 16,000, they're very cheap because it's like still developing market. So in general, yes, it's easier to sell that to them, but it's like a very big category. They the other thing, they follow different curriculums, and also it really can change their behaviors in terms of buying, like because you have the main curriculums. It can be local curriculum of that country, of particular country. It can be British Cambridge curriculum. It can be IB curriculum. That's the probably most popular curriculums I found. But there are like I don't know, Dutch schools, for example, in Jakarta. They follow the Dutch curriculum and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and cool. So in Jakarta now, and you run a coding school. Can you tell me more about that? How that all started and where you're at now?
Well, the coding school in Indonesia, I think it's a bit of a romantic story in a way. So my business partner and my friend Bartek, so it's also a Polish guy. We lived that time in Jakarta where we met. After some time, he was a teacher for many years. I had some IT business before, and then he read this article that Singapore it's become very popular in Singapore to learn coding, and he say, okay, I want to sign up my two boys, his kids there, and then apparently there was nothing like that in Jakarta. And then he get to this idea, okay, so maybe that's an opportunity for us. So we started mostly to thinking about his kids and their future. Very humble with 19 students in the first location in 2017. And then we started growing it at the beginning quite slow, but at some point we started franchising. So we currently, just yesterday, I signed the agreement for 26th location in Indonesia. So basically, we are very proud because Indonesia is a big country, very wide. We have three time zones, and we are the biggest coding school and the only one which is located in the three time zones. Why? Because we also present in Papua, in Jayapura. So at the beginning, like people really don't know what is it. Like they literally came to our locations. We try to make it like very attractive visually, create some kind of a futuristic experience for parents and students. And they were like coming because they're curious what is it, but then they were asking what is coding. Like they don't understand. But a few years later, we don't have to answer these questions anymore. It's becoming like very popular. Also, we started a bit not only focusing on the B2C market, but also we started working with schools. So for a couple of schools in Indonesia, we outsource computer science classes. Right now, we also partner with some company from Europe, and we have our own curriculum digitalized, so the schools can implement our curriculum and within the schools as a SaaS. So basically, also they teach it and need to know much about programming to start teaching coding. We try to solve the problem of not the lack of qualified teachers to actually teach technology, because it's a big, I would say, global problem, and even bigger in developing countries like Indonesia. So we have a different models. One is like live classes within the groups or individuals in the centers. The other one is like outsourcing extracurricular and intracurricular activities at schools, and also like selling them software so they can do it by themselves.
Wow, it's amazing how it's managed to grow so much in just 7 years. So how did you manage to grow it so much?
Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask me. I mean, yeah, the beginnings were difficult for sure. Then there were COVID. Beginning of the COVID was super difficult because we had quite expensive center, for example, in the shopping center, and then the shopping center didn't give us any discount, so we almost bankrupt that time. And then it's accelerated during the COVID, but because like everybody stay at home, nothing to do, and it took quite a lot of time in Indonesia to lift all these regulations. So actually, schools were closed for 2 years in Indonesia. So there were no much other activities. So coding was super popular at that time, doing online. It helped us to scale a lot. Then year after COVID was again difficult because then everybody just didn't want to see the screen and everything but not the screen. So that time we started really focusing on schools. Yeah, and right now it's kind of growing and more stable. We also cooperate, for example, with the publisher from Singapore, Marshall Cavendish. So we created programs for them, and they sell it in 17 countries at least, which is quite interesting and unexpected that a company from Indonesia managed to sell curriculum to school in Switzerland, for example.
Wow. What are your plans for the future with this? Where do you see it going?
Well, so we are expanding in Indonesia for sure, and then we started also the expansion within the region. So we're talking about Malaysia. We just signed a contract in Philippines, Thailand. That's our natural next places. Also, we started last year a joint venture in Poland. So I kind of brought back business from Indonesia to Poland, and we have a online coding school partner with one of the biggest English online school in Poland as a joint venture. And then we really focus on the software I said, because we believe that this our regular model have limitation with the scaling this business because simply, as I said, there's not enough teachers who can do it, and it's very difficult to train them. So with this software, we believe we can make it also more affordable, because in Indonesia, we have around 70 million students within our age group. But for our regular courses, maybe 1 million can afford. And there is 69, 68 billion of students in Indonesia only who can't afford that. But if we can kind of automatize it and then make it like a software which is still very attractive for them, but not that heavy in terms of hiring teachers, we believe we can solve very big problem here. And also in other countries, not only developing countries, but for sure developing countries understand this concept a bit better, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I know in developing countries, there's always the demand for education, but there's not always the economical means to afford these things. And often it can end up that people with the most money can afford, and then the people who want the product but don't have the money can't. So yeah, that's always an issue. And so could you tell me a little bit more about the software?
Yeah, we call it Future Classroom. So the software itself, we created the content for right now grade 3 to 12. We have a few courses. First of all, they are very interactive. We have a lot of videos, quizzes, different kind of activities inside. And the big part, the whole content is also connected to Sustainable Development Goals, SDG goals from UN. So basically, for example, third, fourth grader learned how to make games, but they make games, for example, about the hygienic, about the importance of brushing the teeth, or learning which kind of food is healthy, which kind of food is unhealthy. So we also try to bring this social responsibility part of it, and also showing how this can help for the future of our planet, let's say. And then the most important, or one of the most important part, is also everything is in cloud, and everything is accessible. So for example, there is a tool, Scratch, for learning programming for kids, and you don't need to install anything. You can go directly from the platform, and it's connected. So for example, a teacher can easily manage the class and can see which student did what project, where is it with his progress, what kind of problems he has, what kind of answers he gave wrong, and so on. For more advanced programs like JavaScript, for example, CSS or Python, there is a component which also check the code itself. So basically, teacher even don't have to know everything about that, because the algorithm check it. So we try to solve three problems. One is lack of teachers. Another one is lack of curriculum for schools, because also, like, we've seen schools want to implement computer science in the countries of Indonesia. We see the publishers sell the textbooks which was 14 years old, and they have a Microsoft Word version which is like that old that you don't even cannot install it, right? So they learn really outdated things. And the third one is hardware. So currently, like, exam in Indonesia itself, Google sold to public schools 1.5 million Chromebooks. And the problem with Chromebooks sometimes is that not everything, like, you cannot install that much on the computer. So everything, like, for example, to program in Python or Arduino is a bit difficult, but we managed to solve it by this platform.
That's great, solving some serious problems, especially here in the UK as well. Old textbooks, lack of hardware, software, teachers. It seems the same issues are present all around the world. Cool. And so, yeah, you're also the president of EdTech Poland, so it'd be great to hear more about that.
Yeah, so during my time since career, I noticed that there were a few companies from Poland which we were like going abroad, like the big event, Bet UK. There is event in the US, East, and many like smaller events where we try to represent Poland and our companies. But we become as a bunch of friends or people who were just meeting on the conferences, mostly abroad. And then I started realizing that the other countries, they have some strong organizations. Like, actually, UK is a role model for me because there is BISA as a very strong organization. and also the governmental help from it. It used to be DIT, I think it's DBT right now, so the Department of International Trade. I don't know how they changed the name now, but it was very helpful to British companies to actually expand. I noticed. So we started thinking, okay, we are kind of alone. Nobody really know about our sector and our industry and so on. So we started cooperating together. Then I was joined in the board by Rafał, who used to be part of Ministry of Education, responsible for the digitalization of the school. So he brought to the foundation this kind of a governmental know-how, and he was keen to help us. So we run it together, and then we mostly work with scale-ups, so the companies which are ready for the expansion. We do a lot of promotion inside Poland. We review most of the new bills, policies from the ministries about the digitalizations, and also we help to connect or organize the Polish pavilions abroad. Yeah, so this small organization, by the number of people, there's just 3 of us who work there, which means I'm a part-time vice president. Rafał is full-time, and now we have one person, Joanna, who helps us. But also, I think one of the biggest benefit or change we brought with this organization is actually companies who started being part of it, from being like kind of like competitor vibe, which they don't want to talk to each other, and then like they see, oh, this is kind of like my enemy. We created a very strong ecosystem when I think the cooperation is above competitiveness, and we rather try to make the cake bigger than just fight for the small cake.
Yeah, no, I think in most aspects of business, there's always a big enough slice of the cake for everyone, for sure. And
True.
you can probably learn more from your competitors than you can hide from each other. So yeah, I agree with that. And so how does the EdTech market in Poland differ from other parts of the world? And or is there anything interesting specifically in Poland?
I think yes. So recently we had. Okay, so also like talking about EdTech, maybe I should start from it. EdTech is very wide term, because it's like, so we mostly, as my activities foundation, we mostly focus on K-12. So we focus on everything which happens in schools from kindergarten to grade 12. When you finish high school, or depends how you call it in different countries. We don't do much with the university level, but that's totally different market, I would say. There is like also everything which for adults, for corporates, or B2C market, like lifelong learning solutions. So we focus on K-12. And then in this particular market, I think in Europe, Poland was quite specific recently, because we had quite a few advancement and interventions from the government, which make Polish schools progress in terms of technology. So first of all, for already a few years, like almost all schools in Poland are connected to internet, like fast internet. So there's no much issue with access to internet from schools, which surprisingly is not the case in every, even like much richer European countries. The other thing, we started digitalization from buying this interactive monitor. So I think every public school in Poland have 1 or 2 interactive monitors. So it was like first wave of technology I would say. And then there were a few interventions, which the biggest one was 2 years ago with Laboratory of the Future, Future Lab, this project called. So basically, Polish government spent around 350 million euro to equip all the public primary schools with the STEAM laboratory. So you can assume that each school in Poland have robotics lab, they have a VR lab, they have different furnitures for technical education and tools for that, microcontrollers and so on. So we brought this, and the other thing is the market is mostly driven by hardware. So it's a good place to be a hardware producer or vendor. It's not easy place yet to be a software or content provider. But when I watch other countries which were a bit more advanced, at some point that will be the time when we will stop buying this big number of hardware devices and we start focus on what to show or how to use them, buying different software and content. But yeah, a few new projects are coming also with the recovery fund in Europe to Poland. So it will be again interesting market. But this Future Lab, actually, it was a bit faster than other countries, which European Union, which started introducing this. So at some point, we were a country which many other countries will look up to see how it can be done.
Yeah, and it seems you're obviously doing a lot, running different. You've got your fingers in many pies. How do you manage your time to do so many different things?
That's not easy. I don't. I would not lie. It's just I think I have energy because it's driven by kind of a passion. So I just like. I think the most what I like is to have an impact. So for example, in Indonesia with Koding Next, we kind of are pioneer. Even right now, we have quite a few competitors. It's always we kind of a pioneer, which many people look up and then they copy it, and then it's also interesting to actually use the imagination what we can do even more than before. But managing the time, yeah, it's not easy because of the time zones, of course. It's not too bad. Summer Indonesia to Poland is just 5 hours, or Kuala Lumpur to Poland is 6 hours. But it's still, it's also about building strong teams, I think, which can manage certain projects. And I guess it's also different time of the year. I'm needed more in different projects, so I kind of switch because it's seasonal, and the good part for me, different seasons are in different countries, so I cannot like focus on that. But yeah, in general, not easy thing.
And I can imagine running a business in a country, that's not your own, different language, different culture, different laws, legislations. Like, how's that? How do you manage to navigate your way around that?
Yeah, well, Indonesia, it's very different, but it's been many years I spent, so a lot of learning. Before I started the business in Indonesia, first I was for half a year a student exchange. That's how the story started. Then I used to work there in Indonesian company for 2 years. When I was the only foreigner there, so it was very interesting experience. And also I was like, for the second year, I was like shadowing the owner of the company for quite some time. So I did interesting network, and I see a lot of like background stories, how to run business there, even though it was in totally different industry. I learned a lot. Yeah, legislation is very difficult to understand because it's really different. Like we cannot. It's just a lot of learning by doing, and yeah, I learned the language to the level enough to talk to my employees even they don't speak English. However, we try to have most of our employees English speaking. But yeah, this part I in a unofficial way I can speak pretty fluent Indonesian. Official way is a bit difficult for me, but then I try to not be involved in this kind of situations where I need it, mostly written part. Yeah, and then ChatGPT started helping a lot. Like it's much faster.
Yeah, ChatGPT is always great. And Indonesian, how did you learn that? And how did you find it to learn?
Well, it's pretty easy language in terms of structure of grammar. I would say it's probably one of the easiest. It's also how they make a vocabulary is also very interesting. So I give you funny part. Like for example, sun is there are two words, mata and hari. So mata is eye, and hari is a day. So matahari is like a eye of the day, right? And you have a lot of different kind of poetical words, like how they create the vocabulary in Indonesian, but it doesn't sound like any European language. Maybe if you speak Dutch, you can pick up a few words, but other than that, it's totally different group. So it's mostly about learning the words, and this at the beginning was very difficult because they sound like totally nothing you ever learned before. But grammatically, is really simple language. And on the other hand, it's much easier than most of the Asian language because it's not tonal. At some point I tried to learn Chinese and I realized I'm like too deaf or too stupid for that. So I gave up after 2 classes. But Indonesian is pretty like how it's written. That's how you read it. So in this case, it's even easier than English.
Yeah, I've always heard that Indonesian is one of the more easier Asian languages. And when you're learning, for example, be it languages or anything, like how are your preferences to learn? Do you like to use textbooks or apps or?
Well, basically, I like to have textbooks, but so that's how I learned, for example, English. But with Indonesia, it's a bit different story because I just came here for the first time 2009, 2010. So there was no like Google Translate and so on. I have like a few classes, but I went also to the city, which back then was super boring. So I was just walking around and like talk to people, and then I tried to pick up words, and then I came back home and I was checking online dictionary word by word. What does it mean? Try to memorize it. And then when I was used to work in Indonesian company, I was going for a lot of meetings and they were like mixing the language. That's also Indonesian business culture is like kind of like they call it mixed language. So they speak few words in English, few words in Indonesian, and that's fine for them. So I try to understand from the context of the English words what are the other Indonesian words, and then again I try to learn. So this language I learn more by practice. So sometimes I lack of some fundamental things which I try to catch up. But on the other hand, I really understand the regular daily basis conversations, because that's how I learned sometimes very unofficial way of, or even slang words, you know.
Yeah. That's always the thing. When learning, skills are always learned best practically. It makes you wonder, do you think there's always a gap between, like, say, language learning apps and real life? Like, do you think with AI advancing that we could see, apps that allow us to learn slang and speak with natives all via AI, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. It can be a case. I mean, it's growing very fast, and then maybe one day we will not really have to uh, learn other languages. However, with this learning or not learning something, even if we don't have to, doesn't mean we shouldn't. Still, we have to understand certain things, and also learning language, I guess, is a pretty good exercise for our mind. And also, I think to understand someone's culture is much easier if you understand the language. It's hard to actually verbalize what I exactly mean, but the way, for example, Indonesian speak is totally different. The Polish people speak and the British people speak, and then later in some certain situations, you can see it actually affects their daily routine or behavior, or how they act socially. So I think it will be still good to learn languages, but yeah, I will definitely take big part of translators jobs, interpreters jobs.
Yeah. And moving on from that, it seems obviously you've started a lot of businesses and other things. Have you always been entrepreneurial, or?
My first business I started in the first grade, and not because I wanted to make business, but back then Polish economics was not that good. So I wanted to find a job, but before in the high school I started working quite early, let's say 16, 17 years old, and I always had this, jobs like warehouse keeper or stuff like that, and then I was like, it brings me money, but I don't learn anything. And then a friend came and said, there is this trend of smoking shisha right now, but you cannot smoke this shisha in the clubs. So we were like doing a catering of shisha. That was my first business, and then I realized I do 1 or 2 events per week. I'm in the club, I was 20 years old, so I was like with the people, even like I didn't party, but I still was like kind of in the party, earning better money than if I would do 5 times a week part-time job in the warehouse. So kind of hooked me, and then I was not always an entrepreneur. I had a time when for example, I was a consultant in EY, Ernst and Young back then. So I have mixed experience, and which I learned a lot also from the corporate. But I think creating something new and having this kind of impact, and thinking, okay, that's something right now. For example, Koding Next, we have around 20,000 active students, I guess. And thinking, okay, so from the stupid idea with my friend just to teach coding to kids, and then to his kids, now we have 20,000 students. It's a nice feeling, and then it helps you to survive in the difficult moments, I would say.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing when you can create an idea and turn it into reality, for a successful reality, for sure. And where do you see the biggest opportunities next in EdTech or business in general? For example, if you were to start your own, you were chucked on a desert island and you've got to start a new business from scratch, like what would you be doing?
It's an interesting question. Like going from the problem perspective, I think more and more we will have problem with teachers. Like this job, people just don't want to do it. And like, for example, in Poland, we have one of the oldest teachers in Europe, but in every country, even the countries which pay quite a good money, you still have problem to have teachers. So I think something with helping teachers to reduce their workload, something which personalize a bit of student path and adjust it to learning behavior of like because different students learn in different way. So something which can adjust this, and of course mix of AI if you have to if you want to have a bigger evaluation. I'm just joking. It's very useful. So mix of it, I think, could be a good thing. But then you have to choose particular problem which we want to solve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks very much for coming on. It was much appreciated. It was amazing to speak to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Hopefully, your listeners will get something interesting from this. And then, if someone is curious of anything what I said or needs some advice, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So, yeah, thanks you, Alex, for having me here.